welcome to WeedBudz Radio. I'm your host, Rye, and I'm honored to be here with Jennifer so she can share a little bit about how her family got this business started and where they are today. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to hear more about how you joined the family business.
They were into like organics and vitamins and industry, and like that's how I grew up, really with the focus on wellness. I mean, I studied plant medicine, I studied Chinese medicine. When CBD became a thing, when CBD became a thing, a lot of our customers were asking us like, what is this? Can this help me? It was mostly parents talking about for their children. And they were like, we're ordering this stuff online. We don't know what we're getting. Like, how do we know? And we're like, we don't know. Like, why do you think we know anything about this? Right. And I wouldn't say we were like an anti-cannabis household, but I mean, we were just like, organic health food. Like there was no drinking, there was no, you know what I mean? Like that just wasn't part of my life. Like, to this day, I've never smoked marijuana.
Really?
So it's like, so it just wasn't like part of my life, and it wasn't something that was on my radar from a wellness perspective. But then one of our staff members who has MS was like, listen, this is the future. Like, this is the only thing that's offering me any help. And we just became interested. So me and my family went out to Colorado to actually meet with the Stanley brothers and to tour the facility. And then, we did some research. We went out to California. We went to DHU where they were doing some research on cannabis. And that's kind of how this started. And we started bringing in products from California and Colorado that were tested, that were really great, and putting them in the health food stores. And then we realized that, and we were the only people that were bringing stuff into New York. Like this was before it was a thing, right? Like,
Sure.
and it really gave a lot of parents with children with like autism and with seizure disorders hope for the first time, because they really didn't find any like resources in Western medicine. So and then we realized just people want more, right? And they want more education, and they were kind of like crowding the registers at the health food stores. So we were like, we need separate spaces for this. And so we actually just opened up a store next door to one of our stores. And that was like the first 7 Leaf Clover. And it was like full of books. It wasn't really it was like full of books. And like, it was really a resource center for education. And we had staff there that knew all about CBD, that was trained with these companies, that went through medical marijuana training, like the same licensing as we still do. And then went through like the dispensary training that employees in California were going through. And so it was just like kind of a resource center. And then slowly we just started adding products, and then and then it became like a standalone store. And then we just kind of grew from 1 store to 2 stores to 3 stores, and then online. And so it was really like an organic growth, and more about like people, from a base of wellness and education and plant medicine. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And now it's just developed into a full-blown thing.
That is so good. That is so cool. So what were you doing prior to evaluating CBD?
So I was working with my my family business. I mean, I spent like a good 10 years overseas, traveling. I worked in retail, I worked in business, I worked in supermarkets primarily, because that's my family business, right?
Sure.
And then I came back to the US. And I was working with my family business, which was that was what you do, right? Like,
Sure.
They have a family business, and I'm the only kid that's going to work there. So I was just working in the stores and just helping my parents and just learning about what it's like to run a business, and doing my duty as a good daughter, I think. And then it really just evolved organically. And my mom, who's super, super conservative, was really gung-ho about CBD. And that's what made me like, it made me create. And then we started meeting more and more people. And so many of our customers are, FDNY and NYPD, and they would use it for like PTSD. And like, it just kept on evolving. And so we learned a lot from customers, actually. And then we were able, as kind of like front runners in New York, we would sometimes fly to Colorado just to bring product because they wouldn't ship it, right? Like, so we got to learn like directly from people who were growers, but we were total novices, and we had all the same questions that people have, like, is CBD going to make me high? Like, what is this? Like, is this addictive? And we had no idea. So we really could relate to people who would come in and be like, what Like what is this, right? And then also, it's interesting because now it's evolved into this like, Delta-8 craze, and now legalization has just happened. And so that's like kind of the next step for the business. And so it's really, it's really evolved organically, but our focus was always kind of wellness. Like how do people include it into their lives in a meaningful way to help them, manage their pain or anxiety or whatever. So yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. I think there's a lot of individuals that totally get the obligations of a family business. And what I hear from so many second and third generation entrepreneurs that stay within that family business is that, as you know, that the only way for a family business to continue to sustain and to thrive is to adapt and to evolve. And this had to have been a pretty big adaptation and evolution for your family.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not so drastic because people think like people want to do this whole thing like, oh, it's like a drug or whatever, but it's really not. It's just another plant. There's like all these amazing plants. Like I'm just as excited about, cannabis as I am about like turmeric and whalen and like all these other stuff. Like I'm just a nerd when it comes to, how do we use nature to sort of heal our modern problems that modern medicine really doesn't do very well with. My family has made their living, I mean, on basically modern medicine failing people, unfortunately. And so it's just a continuation of, it's like that next stage of wellness. And it's really, really interesting because I see it going towards, psychedelics. So what was once like the antithesis of health and wellness now is being incorporated into what it means to be, healthy, pain-free, living your best life, and how do we use that? So it's a super interesting time to be in the industry.
What products did you initially start with?
Right. So, I mean, I think the first products that we sold were oil. They were all oils. They were all like what they call tinctures. Wrongly, they're called tinctures, but they're called tinctures, but they're oils. We're like CB Sciences, and then we bought in Charlotte's Web. So those were kind of the first two that we really bought in. And then it was funny because we went to the Charlotte's Web operations years after, and we were actually there the day they changed over from manually filling bottles to automatic fill. Like that was cool. The level, like they had people actually pouring it, and like we went to their fields, and it was really, really nice to see what like a family business grow really, really organically. And it was so comforting, and it was definitely something that we wanted to be a part of, just because so many industries now, and the cannabis industry too, is becoming dominated by these like, VCs and huge conglomerates. But it was really nice to see just like another family who really cared about their business the way that we did, and to grow slowly and smart and organically. And so that was just a cool thing. We learned so much from them and the process. And so, yeah, those were like the first two brands that we carried. And then once people in Colorado and California started finding out that we were like the only people in New York carrying stuff, and we would like fly to California, Colorado, and bring back stuff, because that was at a time where they wouldn't even ship over state lines still. And even once we carried it, then they like put a moratorium on shipping over state lines. So then like all these other companies started like calling us, and we started connecting with some, great people and some not so great people. And it kind of grew from there. But we were always about ranging the products that were going to like solve people's problems from a health perspective.
That's incredible. And now, thinking of the evolution and the growth of your business, actually, you know what? Before I ask you about that, Jennifer, you made a distinction, and I wanted to clarify for myself, because when I think of oils and tinctures, I guess I probably use those words wrong. And so I was curious, what is the distinction between an oil and a tincture?
Right. So tinctures are actually, if you talk to like herbalists, and I'm not an herbalist, but herbalists like cringe when you use the word tincture, because tincture is actually something, it's always alcohol derived. It's usually like when an herb is extracted in a certain way and it's concentrated. So you have like dandelion tinctures, you have, I mean, the list is endless, but it's usually an alcohol extraction. It's watery, like some of them they do by like boiling at high temperatures. There's different ways of extracting different herbs, obviously depending what it is. Roots are different than leaves, but it's always it's real ones are always an alcohol extraction, which people don't like the term alcohol because they think that it's like taking alcohol, and it's watery, right? It's not a lipid, it's not a fat. So oil is oil and tincture is tincture. It's just a different yeah, I mean, tincture is
that's a powerful distinction.
That herbalists talk about. So I have had cannabis tinctures. There's a few companies that are doing them. I mean, they taste absolutely disgusting. They taste exactly like how tinctures taste. They're like that, like they're kind of watery. They're a little bit acidic. They have that alcohol. They have that alcohol extraction. Like those are true, right, tinctures, and they do exist. But what we falsely called tinctures is it's just oil in a bottle. Basically, it's just oil in a bottle. It's extraction, but it's just a different thing. I don't know what an herbalist would call oil in a bottle for.
I don't know. That's a great question, but I mean, I'm just grateful that you made that, because now I know. And one of our friends, Jenny Golden, that's come on the show a few times, is a naturopath. So we'll ask her, to break that down, because now that you said that, I've never had a cannabis tincture. I've only ever had cannabis oils.
I don't know. I think a naturopath would be a perfect person to ask. I mean, an herbalist, like a true hardcore, like herbalist would be the best person. I know it's just, it's basically a medicine that's dissolved using alcohol, but just the processing is completely different. It's two
different systems. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
The biggest thing I can notice is like that it's more watery. I don't know why that's the distinction.
Well, I mean alcohol is definitely way more watery than oil, so that makes a lot of sense. And so for those that are looking at tinctures and you see something that might have ethanol or alcohol on it, and versus something that clearly states oil, then one's a tincture, one's an oil.
Right. And even, I mean, in cannabis oils, they do alcohol extraction, right? Like I know that, Charlotte's Web's signature product was alcohol extraction, but just because people don't understand what that actually means, and that doesn't mean that you're drinking alcohol. We've moved to CO2 extractions, and I don't know, you probably could school me a lot better on as I understand it, there's like a lot of environmental impact of CO2 extraction that you don't get with alcohol, but because the mere mention of alcohol makes people cringe, because they think it's the antithesis of wellness, when really that's that's really like how fundamentally you make extractions the right way. So being
in sustainability, like one of our main companies, Not Plastic, one of the things that we're always talking about in our meetings is the distinctions between activism in industrial communities within sustainability, that a lot of the activists, are just going to pinpoint everything that's wrong with each application. And not actually talk about the right formula, the right product, the right application, all of the things. Activists focus on the one thing that's wrong until there's the next thing that's wrong. And I love that, because without the activism, then industry doesn't know what to work on next. And we need to always be working on something. So I can appreciate that and let those two things be and exist. And then you kind of look at that in all of these silos. Like there's just distinctions to be made about everything. So it's just fascinating to me how you have these different systems that ethanol or oil, like they may very well just be what they are. And this one's going to have environmental impacts. This one is too. And so which one's right for the application it's being used for? We don't let that be.
Right. And I would love to get the opinion. I mean, the problem, not the problem, but like, there's definitely, like you said, a place for activists, and they're so knowledgeable. But unfortunately, this is why entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs and activists are activists. And unfortunately, finance people are finance people, because
Yes.
it's like you said, activists like find everything that's wrong. Whereas entrepreneur, like your job every day is to find solutions, right? Like you're solving people's problems. And the contact with, like, somebody can't come into, like, somebody doesn't want to come into my store crippled with anxiety, and you tell them, like, and then you preach them, right? Like, they just don't care. They don't care even about alcohol extraction or oil. There's some things that are just like very, specific to the community. But it would be nice if there was, like a more solutions oriented approach. And then also a responsibility on the business side to like not always give in to what consumers want. Like, okay, like there's that education portion of it that's missing, that I think a lot of people are like, all right, we're just going to do CO2 extraction because nobody wants to see alcohol on it, or we're just not going to talk about it. But it's like, there is that education portion for people to know what they're actually getting and what the benefits and the drawbacks are there. I mean, a perfect example now in the cannabis industry is like the proliferation of like small packaging, which is like so annoying because people want like mini sizes, right? And it's like consumer demand, but that just creates a lot of waste unnecessarily. Yes. And it's just like the bottles and the boxes and the this and the that. And it's just like, do we really need that?
Well, and you know how many of those problems could be solved by just properly labeling the proper disposal of each component that is within a finished object? Like there's so much, and that's one of the things that at Not Plastic, really ultimately what is the differentiator is we are clear. We are clear with the correct disposal of whatever it is we are putting out into the world.
Right.
And just it doesn't need to be much. Outside packaging, recycle. Inside packaging, landfill. This packaging, compost. If we just said A, B, C, this is the proper way, there are consumers out there that are disciplined enough, that care about the world enough, that will do those things.
Right. I mean, something that we definitely lack is that latter end of the product life cycle, right? We're so into like creativity and innovation and packaging and marketing and woo neon colors, cool writing. And then it's like and then we sell it. And then we think our job as business people is done, but really looking at that whole product life cycle, like how is this disposed of? Like what's happening to this after, what are the impacts longer term on this? And that's something that as the United States as a country is not very great about, like just waste management, right? Like how much
I just wrote it on my hand. That's the distinction that we've been talking about here, that and I see it, right? Being ingrained, being a scientist in sustainability. And I get it. I get the attacks all the time, right? I have no perfect solution, because the perfect solution, you would snap your fingers and it disappears.
Well, I mean, there's better, right? So I said, like, I lived overseas. So I lived in Australia for 8 years, right? Where like wasting water isn't an option. You're not like, you know what I mean? And so there's some governments, like it's a much more patriarchal government. So there are times where your water just is shut down and then that's just it, right? But everybody composts, right? Like people look at you like you're crazy if you take plastic bags at the supermarket. It's just not socially acceptable. Like how hard is it to take your own bag? And all of us are guilty of it. Like water bottles, like they've outlawed water bottles in some of the states in Australia, right? Like, so there are other countries that are doing a lot of work. Now, the fact that in New York City, we have the same population as in the whole country of Australia, obviously makes things harder. As does, right? Like, I just want a water bottle. Like, people don't want to think about it, and people are so stressed about everything. They're just like, I just don't care. I don't want a bokashi bin in my backyard that's going to smell up everything. So and then obviously there's problems with the recycling program. So you're right in that there's no perfect solution, but I think we have to all endeavor as like individuals and definitely as businesses to just get better at least.
And that's the perfect way to like just really bring that back and say every industry's battling this, and the cannabis industry has a unique opportunity to build correctly from the foundation. And that's what I'm so excited about when I meet individuals like you, because we're right here. It's like, wow, there really is this symbiotic relationship where activism can inspire us to look at a problem that we weren't looking at yesterday. But like, can you let us solve this problem first sometimes? And we got to have those conversations. Now, bringing that to your business, like when you look at how you've grown and evolved your business, like what were those challenges to you that was just like, oh my goodness, like why is this so dang hard when it didn't need to be?
I think there's all the normal problems of business. I mean, I'm in retail, so every industry has their challenges. And I think one thing that other retailers, because we do wholesale, so we speak with other retailers, and obviously this past year has been especially hard, but I think there's this misconception about the cannabis industry that somehow it's distinct from business as business, right? Like business is always fundamentally about operational excellence, financial discipline, financial controls, and people kind of miss that memo. And they think somehow like this is going to be the super lucrative whatever. And it's actually, it's just business, right? Like, and then plus all of the, we did a lot of self-regulation in the beginning because there was nothing holding us. Like we could just do whatever we wanted. We could sell whatever we wanted, but we were kind of like viewed as like an authority. So we had to be careful about what products so we were really crazy about testing our own products that we bought in and whatever. But I mean, there's the normal stuff like keeping up with here in New York. I mean, it's gotten out of control with like permits and licensing. Because they're just looking for the revenue. I mean, I don't think they're trying to keep consumers safe. So there's the compliance aspect, which is really challenging. I think the banking aspect has gotten better over the last couple of years for retailers. I don't think that that's an issue anymore. But having said that, now that we're in a more mature industry, it just is more competitive. And so I think that's it. Yeah.
And I know, like, one of the things that really inspired me when Mike and I were talking about you, Jennifer, is that you're running your business, and we know how hard that is, and we know how often that changes. And we often talk together, Mike Major from Green Lane Communication, who connected Jennifer and I, we were talking about kind of the right way to get into the cannabis industry. And one of the things that we were talking about with
what did you decide?
Well, one of the distinctions that we came up with is that the people that are still here and they're still contributing are people that truly embrace this sense of community. And they contribute to it outside of just their business. And I know that you are very committed to your community. And so I'd love for you to just kind of share a little bit about your team, about your community, like what inspires you to put the care and passion into the business that you do.
Right. I mean, I think there's something in my DNA that definitely came from my family that has been, all about, educating people on health and wellness and how to take control of their diet and vitamins and supplements to to improve their own health and to improve their own lives. So there's definitely that. And my team I have the best team in the stores, and they just really teach me a lot and inspire me just to learn about like what they're struggling with and what they're going through. And the thing that's amazing about retail stores is we have customer data coming in every day from customers, right? They tell us every day what they need, what problems they're dealing with. And so it's like, I'm a business person. My job is to obviously make money, but I have to give value for that money that I'm collecting, right? And how do you give value other than to solve people's problems? And if you want to stay competitive, you just have to solve the problems better than anybody else, right, on the block. And so I like to think that by upping our game and like walking our path and just like staying educated and really listening to customers and also indulging, like, what are we struggling with? Like, what would we like to see? We can better solve those problems, right? Because saying like this whole thing about like, I care about the community and whatever, like that's a really, really great song and dance, especially like in the cannabis industry, especially when we talk about like legalization and minorities getting involved and la, 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 la. But the reality is that how does that actually manifest and benefit the people that we're talking about? It really, like, I don't know. I don't think it has, right? So
we can talk about it all day. We got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like when you you know, obviously when the rubber hits the road and how people experience us every day. I mean, I'm not a big Instagram person. I'm not like a marketing person. That's not what I do. I'm an ops person. I just don't care. Like, I'm always like, whenever anybody was like, oh, you should be more on Instagram, you should do all this stuff. And I should, but like, there's only so much time in the day. I'm always like, why am I going to talk about how great my business is instead of working on actually my business being that great? Like, when everything is running perfect and everything is perfect all the time and every customer gets their problem solved perfectly the first time around, then I'll have time to go put on makeup and like we can do a video about nothing, right?
Oh, you're going to look inside before you go fix outside.
Well, it's not even like fixing. It's just like, what am I going to talk? Like, people are talking about how great everything is. And it's like, why don't we focus on being great instead of looking great? Like, I just don't get it. Like, that's just not I don't see that that's my job in the business community. Like, I don't care. I mean, like, to be another girl who's fucking putting on fake eyelashes and talking to people about like how healthy cannabis is or whatever it is, it's like, that's great, but that can come after we're completely excellent, solving everybody's problems that walk into our store. Every customer has like the perfect product for them and they can't wait to come back, and we don't mess anything up ever, and our inventory is correct, and like everything good about like business and everything good about customer service. And really, like, that's how you serve the community, by being an excellent business, not by just like taking pictures of yourself and whatever. I just don't, that's not my thing, right? I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think the talk about community is really cheap until it's like every day, like, right? It doesn't matter what I say on the show. It matters what I do every single day in the community. And that's why I'm on the shop floor every single day.
Period.
There was no corona for us. We were on the shop floor. We do home deliveries. All of the staff does home deliveries. All of the staff is involved in every single thing. My tech guy will still be on the shop floor, you know, a few hours a week, just because to stay connected to like what's actually happening with people right now, right? Like, what's going on, like what's changing, what do people need from us that they're not getting, and that changes through time. And it's sometimes it's just like free samples. Okay, so let's just give people free shit because they just want to try things without having to buy the thing. Okay, that's fine. And then sometimes it is like home deliveries, like people are just petrified to go out, so let's just totally transform the business. And we do home deliveries from New York City to we do home deliveries 3 hours away, same day. And so it's just about, yeah, like I said,
Your parents have this level of grit too?
My parents are so much more hardcore than I am. So I'm first generation. They both grew up in third world countries. So they have a work ethic that's just beyond anything that I can do. Like, because they just have that real third world fear of poverty work ethic that the rest of us just don't have. They're machines. They're like both, my mom's 60 something, my dad's 75 or whatever. And they still work 7 days a week. They just are like, I don't know. There's something there. There's a motor there that I just didn't inherit in my.
Jennifer,
birth.
You're a machine.
I don't know. Yeah. So I try, but yeah, they obviously taught me so much about, you know, retail is just weekends, it's nights, it's all about your team and your staff, and it's dealing with people every day. It's dealing with sick people every day. So yeah, they taught me.
That's community right there. That's not cheap talk. That is Jennifer's community right there. I mean, and you're committed to it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for
that was amazing.
Listening. I don't know. I never really talk about these kind of things, so it's interesting to actually.
Well, I'm grateful that we're spoiled enough to have you talk about these things, because I know if I'm getting a lot out of it, then everybody else is too. So like, I'm just so grateful for you taking this time, Jennifer. And I know that everybody is going to want to connect with you after this, because you've inspired me. I know you've inspired some other people. How do we stay connected? What's the best way for us to connect with you?
So, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, so people can definitely look up 7 Leaf Clover on LinkedIn. We also have a contact page on the website. I'm really accessible, and anything that will come through on the contact page, you know, I'll definitely receive. And then obviously I'm on the shop floor. So just come into the shop and just say hello, because I'm on the shop floor 7 days a week.
Where can we find you at the shop?
So I'm either in the Brooklyn store or the Hampton store or the Westbury store. So we have stores, you know, in the city and on Long Island. So I'm just running around in the stores, but I'm not like in the back in my secret office or whatever. Like I actually am on the shop floor. It's not crazy for me to even take paperwork out there and just kind of do my paperwork out there or whatever, even if there's somebody else handling the floor. You know, it's just really important that I hear what's going on and that I'm there to answer any questions that people might have. So yeah, I mean, we love to have people come in and just to even say hello. So yeah, come into the stores.
Amazing. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been lovely. It's been really, really nice. Corona's been an isolating time, so it's nice to connect with people.
Absolutely has. And we're grateful that all of you have joined us as well. And if you're looking for some connection, connect with Jennifer and me over on LinkedIn. Those links will be in our show notes, of course, on weedbudzradio.com. So you'll have direct links to connect with both of us from the show today. And also you'll be able to see some of the amazing products that Jennifer and her family carry through 7 Leaf Clover. So head on over to the website, subscribe. We'll see you again real soon.